I'm Sarah, 31 years old, and 2 weeks ago I overheard a conversation that shattered everything I thought I knew about my family. My father, who I'd been financially supporting for years, told a friend I was a failure who should have never been born. My mother, she agreed. That same night, I started planning something I never imagined I'd do. This morning, my father stood in the driveway, red-faced, pointing at the for sale sign in front of our house, my house. "What the hell is this?" he shouted. I just looked at him and said, "It's exactly what it looks like." Before I tell you how I walked away from the family that used me for over a decade, drop a comment and let me know where you're watching from. And if this story resonates with you, hit like and subscribe. Because sometimes, freedom starts with one decision no one expects you to make. I had, on paper at least, built what most people would consider a pretty successful life. I mean, by societal standards, I was crushing it. Every morning, my alarm would blare at 5 a.m. Yeah, 5 a.m., before the sun even thought about rising. And I'd literally drag myself out of bed. No time for hitting snooze, not when you're building an empire, right? I'd head straight to the home gym I'd set up in the basement of my beautiful Atlanta Colonial. An intense hour-long workout. Sweat, burn, push. It was my ritual, my anchor. After that, a quick protein smoothie, always vanilla, my go-to, and a fast shower. I'd be out the door by 7:15, just as the Atlanta traffic was starting to get truly brutal. My commute downtown to the Sterling Wealth Management office was a daily battle of wills. But when I walked through those glass doors, ready to face the day, my colleagues saw me as the perfect example of hard work paying off. And they weren't wrong. I'd graduated with my MBA from Emory, top of my class, if I'm being honest, and secured a position as a financial analyst. From there, it was a steady, relentless climb. 3 promotions in just 5 years had put me on the fast track. My boss, Catherine Brooks, a formidable woman with a sharp mind and even sharper suits, had really taken me under her wing. She was my mentor. "Sarah, you're going places in this company," she'd tell me during our monthly check-ins, her gaze steady and unwavering. "Your attention to detail and dedication to clients is exactly what we value here." What they didn't see, what no one really saw, was what waited for me at home. Just 3 years prior, I'd purchased my dream house, a beautiful 4-bedroom colonial, exactly what I'd always envisioned. It was valued at $830,000, and I'd planned to live there alone, maybe eventually with a partner, building a life on my own terms. The ink was barely dry on the mortgage papers. I'd only been moved in for 2 months when my parents, David and Eleanor Miller, showed up. My father's construction business had gone bankrupt for the second time, and they needed a place to stay. "It's just temporary, sweetheart," Mom had assured me, her voice soft and apologetic. "Just until we get back on our feet." 3 years later, they were still there, still on their feet apparently, just not their own feet. And I was still paying for everything, every single thing. The mortgage, of course, utilities, groceries, even their cell phone bills and car insurance. They contributed nothing financially, not even token amounts for household expenses. Dad spent his days applying for jobs he never seemed to get, or maybe never truly wanted, looking back now. He'd be on his phone, scrolling, occasionally making a call, but nothing ever materialized. Meanwhile, Mom volunteered at church, a lot actually, and met friends for lunch. Her social calendar was often fuller than mine. And then there was my sister, Jessica. Every Wednesday evening, she'd bring her 3 kids over for family dinner. Jessica had married young, right out of high school, to her boyfriend Mark. She'd had her first child at 21 and dropped out of community college. Despite this, or perhaps because of it, my parents beamed with pride whenever she walked through the door. "There's our girl," Dad would say, his voice full of warmth, embracing her while barely acknowledging my presence. A quick distracted nod in my direction, if I was lucky. After these dinners, I'd retreat to my home office, the weight of the day, and frankly, the weight of their expectations, settling into my bones. Exhaustion, a familiar companion, would wrap itself around me, the crushing burden of supporting everyone, but I'd convinced myself it was my duty. I was the successful one, after all. This was what good daughters did, right? My best friend, Chloe Davis, never understood. "Sarah, they're taking advantage of you," she'd say during our rare lunch dates. Chloe, with her bright, no-nonsense gaze, always cut right to the chase. "They're adults. They should be supporting themselves, not living off their daughter. They're my parents, I'd reply, the familiar defense automatic, a reflex honed over years. Dad's still looking for work, and Mom never had a career. What am I supposed to do, throw them out on the street? Chloe would just shake her head, a sigh escaping her lips. She knew there was no point arguing. She'd known me since college, watched me achieve every goal I set for myself, only to seemingly hand over the rewards, the fruits of my labor, to my family. She'd seen this pattern for years, and I'd always defended them. That Wednesday morning was a big one. I had an important presentation scheduled for a potential new client, a retirement fund worth millions. Catherine had entrusted me with the lead, a clear sign she was grooming me for the next level. Land this account, and we'll be talking about that senior analyst position, she'd promised. I was buzzing with nervous energy and excitement. As I straightened my blazer, adjusting the lapels, and checked my appearance one last time before leaving, I caught sight of my father in the kitchen. He was sipping coffee, scrolling through his phone, completely oblivious to my heightened state. "Big day today, Dad," I said, trying to inject some enthusiasm into my voice, hoping for even a flicker of interest from him. "Wish me luck." He barely looked up. "Sure, honey, good luck." That familiar sting of disappointment, a dull ache I'd grown accustomed to, flared up. I pushed it down. Today was about my career, about proving to Catherine, and more importantly, to myself, that I deserved that promotion. Today was about my future. Little did I know how drastically that future was about to change. The presentation went better than I could have hoped. The clients, typically reserved, were engaged, leaning forward, asking insightful questions. By the end, they were nodding along with my recommendations, their expressions shifting from skepticism to genuine interest. Catherine, across the conference room, caught my eye and gave me a subtle thumbs up, her lips curving into a rare, approving smile. As we wrapped up, the CEO of the retirement fund, a gruff but fair man, shook my hand firmly. "Miss Miller, you've clearly done your homework. We'll be in touch very soon." After they left, Catherine pulled me aside, her eyes twinkling. "That was excellent work, Sarah. I think we've got them. Take the rest of the day off. You've earned it." Excitement bubbled in my chest, a lightness I hadn't felt in a long time. I packed up my materials, my mind already racing. I couldn't wait to share the news with someone. And despite everything, the years of subtle neglect, the constant comparison, my parents were the first people I thought of. Maybe this time, Dad would actually be proud. I checked my watch. 2:30 p.m. They wouldn't be expecting me for hours, which meant I could surprise them with the good news and maybe even suggest celebrating with dinner out. A real celebration, just us. When I pulled into our driveway, I noticed both their cars were there. Unusual for a Wednesday afternoon. Mom usually had her book club or some church event. I entered quietly through the side door that led directly to the kitchen, planning to announce my early arrival and, of course, my success. But then I heard my father's voice. It was coming from his bedroom, which he'd converted into a home office of sorts, mostly for his endless, unproductive job applications. He was on a video call, his voice carrying clearly down the hallway. "Yeah, Thomas, we're still living with her. What choice do we have? The housing market is ridiculous these days." I recognized the voice on the other end as Thomas Clark, my father's friend from his construction days. I was about to call out to make my presence known when something in my father's tone, a dismissive edge, made me pause. "Hold on, let me end this call properly. Sarah's always nagging me about just hitting the red button." I heard a click, a faint sound, followed by my father's voice again. "There, now we can talk freely." Except he hadn't ended the call. He'd only minimized the window, thinking he'd disconnected. I could still hear Thomas asking if he was still there, the tinny sound of his friend's voice confirming the call was still active. And then my father's voice, clear and cold, filled the silence. "She's nothing, Thomas. A failure. Should have never been born." The words hit me like a physical blow, like a punch to the gut, stealing the air from my lungs. I froze in the hallway, unable to move forward or retreat. My heart hammered against my ribs, a frantic, trapped bird. "Sure, she makes good money," my father continued, his voice dripping with disdain. a bitter, condescending tone that turned my earlier pride to ash. But what kind of life is that? 31 and still single, married to her job. It's pathetic. And she lords it over us like we should be grateful she's letting us live here. At least you've got a roof over your head, Thomas replied, his voice thin through the speakers, trying to sound reasonable. Yeah, but at what cost? My dignity? Do you know how embarrassing it is when people ask what I do and I have to admit my daughter supports me? It's humiliating. His voice, once so full of contempt for me, immediately softened, pride evident in every syllable as he shifted topics. What about Jessica? She doing okay? Now there's my real achievement. 3 beautiful grandkids, a solid marriage. Sure, she didn't go to some fancy college like Sarah, but she's got what matters, a family, love. Mark's business is doing well enough. They're talking about buying a bigger house soon. I heard the bedroom door open, and my mother's voice joined the conversation. Who are you talking to, David? Just Thomas. We were discussing the girls. Oh. My mother's voice grew quieter as she moved closer to the computer. Did you tell him about Sarah's promotion? The one she won't stop talking about. Her tone was laced with a barely concealed sneer, a dismissiveness that cut deeper than my father's outright contempt. What's there to tell? Another rung on the corporate ladder. Big deal. My mother sighed, a long, drawn-out sound of exasperation. I know. Sometimes I wonder where we went wrong with her. So cold, so focused on money and status. Not like our Jessica. Exactly. The only good thing about living here is we're saving a fortune. Another year or two, and we can afford to put a down payment on a place near Jessica and the kids. That's the dream. My mother wholeheartedly agreed. I'm tired of walking on eggshells around Sarah, pretending to be interested in her work stories. Remember last Christmas when she gave us those expensive watches? My father laughed. A sharp, humorless sound. Like we needed a reminder of how much money she has. So tasteless. My stomach lurched. Those watches, those beautiful, meticulously chosen watches. They had cost me $3,000. I'd spent weeks researching the perfect style for each of them, wanting to give them something special, something that would last, a tangible symbol of my love and gratitude. And they saw them as tasteless, as a display of wealth. It felt like a punch to the gut. Again. Well, we'll just keep playing the game for now, my mother said, her voice dropping conspiratorially. She needs us more than we need her, even if she doesn't realize it. Without us, who does she have? No husband, no kids. Just that awful friend Chloe who keeps putting ideas in her head. True. Remember when Chloe convinced her to take that trip to Miami instead of helping us with the bathroom remodel? Selfish, both of them. Miami. I had canceled that trip at the last minute after my father complained, quite vocally, about needing help with house projects. I'd lost the deposit, a significant amount of money, and used my precious vacation days to paint and tile instead. For them. The conversation continued, their voices blending into a low hum of casual cruelty, but I couldn't bear to hear more. My heart was pounding so hard I could feel it in my throat, a frantic pulse. Nausea swept over me in waves, cold and metallic. I backed away, silently, each step agonizingly slow. I was grateful I'd worn flats instead of my usual heels. They would have clacked too loudly on the hardwood, betraying my presence. Somehow, through a haze of shock and disbelief, I made it back to my car without being detected. As I sat behind the wheel, my hands were shaking so badly I couldn't insert the key into the ignition. Fragments of their conversation, brutal and unforgiving, echoed in my mind. A failure. Should have never been born. My real achievement. Saving a fortune. The girl they wished had never existed was bankrolling their comfortable retirement. My entire world, the one I'd painstakingly built, meticulously arranged, crumbled around me. The foundation I thought I stood on was revealed to be nothing but smoke and mirrors, a carefully constructed illusion. I don't remember driving to Chloe's apartment. I must have operated on autopilot, muscle memory guiding me through familiar Atlanta streets, while my mind replayed 31 years of memories in a harsh, blinding new light. The times my academic achievements, my straight A's, my scholarships, were acknowledged with distracted nods, while Jessica's C+ in art class was displayed proudly on the refrigerator, framed. The college graduation party, a monumental day for me, the first in our family to earn an MBA, that they left early because Jessica's son, Dylan, had a cold. The countless times they needed loans that were never repaid, simply absorbed into the bottomless pit of my generosity. By the time I parked outside Chloe's building, my initial shock had hardened into something else, something cold, clear, and terrifyingly certain. For the first time in my entire life, I saw my family exactly as they were, not as I desperately wanted them to be, not as I had convinced myself they were for decades. They said what? Chloe's voice echoed through her apartment, filled with a righteous rage that mirrored the storm brewing inside me. I'd recounted everything, the words tumbling out in a raw, broken torrent. Her normally calm demeanor had given way to pure fury on my behalf, her hands gesticulating wildly as she paced back and forth, her fiery red hair almost vibrating with indignation. "You need to confront them right now," she insisted, reaching for her phone, her eyes blazing. "I'll drive you back there myself." I shook my head, curling deeper into the corner of her couch, the worn fabric a strange comfort. I can't go back there tonight. I can't look at them, knowing what they really think of me. Chloe sat beside me, her anger softening into a profound empathy. She took my trembling hands in hers, her grip firm and reassuring. "Then stay here, Sarah. Stay here as long as you need." The initial shock was slowly wearing off, leaving room for memories to surface. Moments I had dismissed, rationalized away, or simply pushed deep down, now returned with painful, searing clarity. Like the time I'd used my entire first year-end bonus, a whopping $15,000, to pay off the remaining debts from my father's second failed business venture. He'd accepted the check with a casual, almost dismissive, "Thanks, kiddo." And then, before I'd even left the room, he was on the phone, immediately calling Jessica to discuss her eldest son, Leo's, private school applications. No mention of my sacrifice, just a quick pivot to his real achievement, or the European vacation I'd meticulously planned for years, dreaming of ancient cities and picturesque landscapes. I'd postponed it not once, not twice, but 3 times to cover what were always termed family emergencies. The first for Dad's knee surgery, which somehow didn't prevent him from playing golf 2 weeks later, laughing and chatting with his buddies. The second for Mom's car accident, minor, they'd said, but requiring a replacement vehicle they simply couldn't afford. And the third for Jessica's unexpected medical bills, when insurance wouldn't cover her youngest daughter Mia's specialized treatment. My dreams put on hold, then canceled, for their convenience. And when I finally moved into my dream house, the crown jewel of my achievements, the symbol of my independence, they'd shown up 3 weeks later with suitcases and sad stories about their landlord selling their rental property. I'd given them the master bedroom, the largest one, with its luxurious ensuite bathroom, moving my own things to the smaller guest room. My privacy, my space, my sanctuary. All surrendered without a fight, because that's what good daughters do, right? That's what I'd always believed. "I've defended him so many times," I whispered to Chloe, the words feeling foreign and heavy on my tongue. I was recalling countless conversations with colleagues who'd subtly questioned my father's business acumen after meeting him at company events. People would ask why he kept failing, why he couldn't seem to hold on to anything, and I'd make excuses. Bad economy, dishonest partners, just bad luck. "Because you're loyal, Sarah," Chloe said firmly, her voice cutting through the self-pity. "That's not a character flaw. It's a strength, one they exploited." My phone buzzed. A text from Rachel White, my assistant at work. "Great job today. Catherine's thrilled. Did you go home sick? Let me know if you need anything." I'd completely forgotten about the presentation's success, the reason I'd gone home early in the first place. It seemed so trivial now, utterly overshadowed by the brutal revelation that had upended my entire world, shattering my perception of reality. "My whole identity has been built around being the good daughter," I said, the realization settling heavily on my shoulders, a crushing weight. The responsible one, the successful one, but they never wanted that. They wanted me to be Jessica. Chloe snorted, a derisive sound. "Jessica? Jessica who can barely keep a job and relies on her husband's family business to survive? That Jessica." "They don't see it that way," I corrected her, a bitter taste in my mouth. They see her children, her marriage, the normal life I've never had because I've been too busy working to support everyone else. As night fell and Chloe made me a comforting mug of herbal tea, I found myself scrolling through property laws on my phone. Not for our house, not then, but for general knowledge. Homeowner rights. The house was solely in my name. They had no legal claim to it, no right to stay if I asked them to leave. The thought sent a strange conflicting mixture of guilt and liberation coursing through me. Guilt for even thinking it, but liberation for knowing it was possible. The next morning, Chloe, ever the practical one, used her connections to get me an emergency session with her therapist, Dr. Evelyn Reed. Dr. Reed was a warm, insightful woman with kind eyes and a gentle demeanor that belied her sharp, analytical mind. "What you're describing is a profound betrayal, Sarah," Dr. Reed said after I'd recounted the previous day's events, the words coming out in a rush, punctuated by ragged breaths. "It's normal to feel disoriented, angry, even grief-stricken. You're mourning the parents you thought you had." "I keep wondering if I should just confront them," I admitted, my voice raw with unshed tears. "Scream at them. Make them understand how much they've hurt me." She leaned forward slightly, her gaze steady. "Would that give you what you need?" I considered the question deeply, really considered it. The thought of their denial, their minimization, their inevitable turning it around on me, I knew them. They always did. "No," I finally said, the word coming out with a surprising certainty. "They'd deny it or minimize it or turn it around on me somehow. They always do. Then what would give you what you need?" The answer came with surprising, chilling clarity. "Freedom. I need to be free of them. Of the obligation, the guilt, the constant striving for approval I'm never going to get." "And how might you achieve that freedom?" I didn't answer immediately. Instead, my mind, the well-trained financial analyst part of me, found myself mentally calculating numbers, my savings, the house's value, the cost of starting over somewhere new, somewhere without the suffocating weight of familial expectations crushing me daily. By the time I left Dr. Reed's office, a plan was forming, not a confrontation. No, that would only be more pain. But an exit strategy, a clean break. I would not give them the satisfaction of my anger or my tears. I would simply remove myself from the equation of their lives, as cleanly and completely as possible. That night, staying at Chloe's again, I couldn't sleep. I created a detailed spreadsheet, steps to take, calls to make, research to complete. By dawn, I had a comprehensive exit plan mapped out, a timeline for extracting myself from the life I'd built around people who had never truly wanted me in theirs. As I finally drifted off to sleep, exhausted but resolute, I felt something I hadn't experienced in years. The lightness of a decision made, a path forward, clear and unburdened. For once, I would put myself first, and I wouldn't apologize for it. For the first time in my entire career, I called in sick the next morning. Catherine was understanding. "You've banked enough goodwill to take a month off if you needed to," she said, but concern colored her voice. I assured her it was just a 24-hour bug, nothing serious. The lie tasted strange on my tongue. I'd always been pathologically honest, especially at work. But now, deception came easily. Perhaps I'd learned from the best. My first call was to Ben Carter, my financial advisor. We'd met monthly for years as I built my investment portfolio, but I'd never heard the urgency in my own voice that I did when I explained I needed an emergency meeting. "I can see you at 11, Rob," he said, a hint of alarm in his tone. "Is everything okay, Sarah?" "It will be," I replied, surprised by my own certainty. Ben's office was on the 30th floor of a downtown high-rise, all glass and chrome, with panoramic views of the city skyline. As I explained my situation, sanitized, of course, without the messy emotional details, his expression remained professionally neutral. "So, you want to liquidate some investments to purchase a new property in another state, while simultaneously selling your current home," he clarified, his pen poised over his notepad. "Yes. I need to know how much I can access quickly without penalties, and what the tax implications will be." He typed rapidly, pulling up my accounts on his dual monitors. "You're in a strong position. The market's favorable for sellers right now, especially in your neighborhood. What locations are you considering for relocation?" "Austin," I said. The decision, made somewhere between Chloe's apartment and his office, felt undeniably right. I've always loved the mountains and the vibrant energy there. By the time I left Ben's office, I had a clear picture of my financial standing and a referral to a real estate agent who specialized in quick sales for professional clients. Sophia Rossi. She called me before I'd even reached my car. "I understand you're looking for a discreet, expedited sale," she said. No preamble necessary. I liked her directness. "I can be at your property this afternoon to assess." "Not today," I replied quickly. "My parents are home. Tomorrow morning would be better. They have a standing breakfast with friends on Fridays." "Parents living with you?" she asked, her tone shifting slightly, a note of understanding, perhaps even sympathy, entering her voice. "Are they co-owners?" "No, the property is solely in my name." "Good, that simplifies things considerably." My next call was to a real estate agent in Austin. Recommended by Sophia, Lisa Perez specialized in relocating professionals and understood my need for discretion and speed. "I can start sending you virtual tours today," she assured me. "Based on your budget and preferences, I already have several properties in mind." The lawyer came next. Laura Gomez, a referral from a colleague who'd gone through a complicated divorce. She confirmed what I already suspected. As the sole owner, I had every right to sell my property, regardless of who was living there. "You'll need to follow proper eviction procedures if they refuse to leave voluntarily," she cautioned, her voice pragmatic. "But given the circumstances, I doubt it will come to that." By mid-afternoon, the framework of my new life was taking shape. The pieces were falling into place with a speed and precision that felt almost surreal. I drove back to my house, timing my arrival for when I knew my mother would be at her weekly hair appointment. My father was likely in the basement, where he'd set up a makeshift workshop for projects he never quite completed. I slipped into my bedroom and began methodically sorting through my personal items. Important documents, my birth certificate, passport, insurance policies, property deeds, went into a secure, fireproof portfolio. My jewelry and small, irreplaceable valuables were next, packed into a carry-on suitcase I could easily transport to Chloe's. In the back of my closet, tucked away behind boxes of old clothes, I found a dusty box of childhood mementos I'd kept through multiple moves, diaries with little locks, school awards, faded photographs. I opened one diary from when I was 12, the handwriting large and looping, the words childish and heartbreaking in their innocence. "Dad forgot my science fair today. Mom said he was too busy with work, but I saw him watching TV when I got home. Jessica got a new bike for getting AB in math. I got all A's again, but no one noticed." Page after page documented small betrayals, moments of blatant favoritism so normal to my childhood self that I'd recorded them matter-of-factly, without complaint, simply as observations of my world. In another box, I found handmade gifts I'd created for my parents over the years. A clay pencil holder for Dad's desk, painted with careful detail, small fingerprints still visible, a beaded necklace for Mom that had taken weeks to string, each bead meticulously placed. Both items were dusty and unused, stored away rather than displayed or worn. Just like the watches, it was a pattern, subtle but pervasive, that I was only now seeing clearly. I was carefully replacing these boxes when my phone rang. It was Jessica. "Hey sis, are you okay? Mom said you didn't come home last night." I hesitated, unsure how much to reveal. Jessica and I had never been close. The age gap, she was older, the firstborn, the adored one, and our parents' obvious favoritism had created a chasm between us. But she wasn't cruel, just self-absorbed in the way people can be when they've always been the center of attention, the sun around which the family orbited. "I'm staying with Chloe for a few days," I said finally, my voice carefully neutral. "I need some space." "Space from what? Did something happen?" Her voice was laced with genuine concern, or at least curiosity. We arranged to meet at a coffee shop halfway between our homes. I wasn't ready to tell her everything, not yet, but I needed to gauge her reaction, to see if she'd been part of their casual, cruel conversations about me. The cafe was busy, a low hum of chatter providing both ambient noise for privacy and enough witnesses to prevent a scene if things escalated. Jessica arrived looking harried, her blonde hair, so like our mother's, pulled back in a messy ponytail. She'd always been the pretty one, the charming one, effortlessly popular, while I was the smart one. A distinction that often felt more like a consolation prize than a compliment. "What's going on?" she asked as soon as she sat down. her eyes wide with a mix of worry and exasperation. Mom's freaking out. She thinks you're having some kind of breakdown. I took a deep breath. Time to drop the bomb. I'm selling the house, I said bluntly, watching her face carefully, every muscle, every flicker of emotion. Her eyes widened, her mouth dropping open slightly. What? Why? You love that house. I'm moving to Austin. I've already started the process. Austin? But what about Mom and Dad? Where will they go? There it was. Her first thought was for our parents, not for me. Not for the monumental life change I was about to undertake. But there was genuine confusion in her expression, not calculation or malice. She truly seemed blindsided. They'll figure it out, I said, my voice steady, betraying none of the turmoil inside me. They're adults, but they can't afford their own place right now. Dad's still looking for work, and Mom's never had a real job. I'm aware, I replied, unable to keep the edge from my voice. I've been supporting them completely for 3 years, paying the mortgage, utilities, groceries, everything. Did you know that? She had the grace to look uncomfortable, fidgeting with her coffee cup. I knew you were helping them out. Helping implies they contribute something. They don't. Jessica fidgeted more, her gaze darting around the cafe. Look, I would help if I could, but with 3 kids and Mark's business just getting established. I'm not asking you to help, I interrupted, my voice firm. I'm telling you what's happening. I'm selling my house and moving away because of Mom and Dad. Did they do something? For a moment, I considered telling her everything. The overheard conversation, the years of dismissal and disrespect, the subtle, insidious manipulation. But looking at her worried face, the genuine bewilderment in her eyes, I realized she truly didn't know. She'd been shielded from the darker side of our parents, cushioned by their unconditional love and approval. She was the golden child, insulated from the reality of their demands. It wouldn't help her, not yet, and it wouldn't bring me closure. My truth was for me. I need a change, I said instead, opting for a simpler, less emotionally charged explanation. The house will sell quickly. They'll need to find their own place. They could stay with us temporarily, she offered, though without enthusiasm. The words felt forced, a duty rather than an invitation. The guest room is small, but that's between you and them, I said, standing up, signaling the end of our conversation. I just wanted you to know directly from me. As I walked away, she called after me, her voice tinged with a raw vulnerability. Sarah, wait, are you okay, really? I turned back, surprised by the genuine concern in her voice. For a brief moment, I saw past the golden child persona, past the years of resentment, to the sister who had once, long ago, defended me against our father's criticism when I'd broken his favorite coffee mug. A fleeting memory, but a real one. I will be, I answered honestly, a small, hopeful smile touching my lips. I will be. That afternoon, I had a video interview with Summit Financial Group in Austin. I'd leveraged connections from a conference I'd attended last year, a casual conversation leading to this unexpected opportunity. The hiring manager, Benjamin Clark, remembered me well. We'd be lucky to have someone with your expertise, Sarah, he'd said during the preliminary call. The team lead position just opened up last month. Perfect timing indeed. As if the universe was finally aligning to help me break free. My final call of the day was to Catherine. I owed her the courtesy of transparency, at least professionally. Austin, she repeated, a note of surprise in her voice after I'd explained my situation. That's unexpected. We have a satellite office there, you know. Not as prestigious as Chicago, perhaps, but growing. Would you consider a transfer instead of resignation? The offer took me by surprise. You'd help me transfer? Sarah, you're one of our top performers. I'd rather keep you in the Sterling family, even if it's from a distance. Think about it. Let me know by Monday. As I ended the call, a profound realization washed over me. I'd accomplished more in one day toward my own happiness, my own liberation, than I had in years of striving to please my parents, years of bending myself into knots trying to earn their approval. The irony wasn't lost on me. It took discovering their true feelings to finally prioritize my own. That evening, I returned home for dinner, watching my parents through new eyes as they discussed their day, complained about neighbors, and asked perfunctory questions about my supposed illness. I answered pleasantly, passed the potatoes, and excused myself early, claiming fatigue. In my room, the sanctuary of my growing independence, I continued my preparations, transferring documents to a secure cloud storage, researching moving companies, creating new bank accounts my parents couldn't access. With each step, the fog of obligation and guilt that had clouded my judgment for so long began to lift. In its place was something unfamiliar but incredibly welcome: determination, uncomplicated by the need for approval. 1 week later, my house was officially on the market. Sophia had worked miracles, arranging for professional staging and photography while my parents were out at one of their countless social engagements. The listing went live on Thursday evening. Described as a luxury family home in a prestigious neighborhood, priced to sell quickly. "We'll hold an open house this Sunday," Sophia informed me. "Based on comparable properties and current market conditions, I expect multiple offers by Monday morning." I nodded, scrolling through the listing photos on my laptop. The house looked beautiful, spacious and bright, devoid of the tension and unspoken resentments that had filled it in recent months. "I'll make sure my parents are out during the open house." "About that," Sophia hesitated. "Have you told them yet?" "They'll find out soon enough." This soon enough came that very evening. I arrived home from work to find my father standing in the driveway, arms crossed, his face thunderous, a dangerous shade of red already creeping up his neck. Beside him, my mother wrung her hands, her expression oscillating between hurt and anger, a familiar theatrical performance. "What the hell is this?" Dad demanded, his voice thick with outrage, pointing to the for sale sign Sophia had installed that afternoon. I walked past him, my hands steady as I unlocked the front door. "It's exactly what it looks like. I'm selling the house." They followed me inside, my mother's voice rising to a pitch I recognized from childhood tantrum management. "You can't just sell our home without discussing it with us first." I set my briefcase down carefully on the entryway table, meeting their furious gazes. "It's not our home. It's my home. My name is on the deed, the mortgage, and every utility bill. I've made every payment for 3 years. So that gives you the right to throw your own parents out on the street." My father's face was turning the dangerous shade of crimson that had intimidated me since childhood, a silent warning of his impending explosion. But I wasn't a child anymore. "I'm selling a property I own. What you do next is up to you." My voice was calm, almost detached, a stark contrast to their escalating fury. My mother stepped between us, tears already forming in her eyes, a masterclass in emotional manipulation. "Sarah, sweetheart, what's gotten into you? Is this about work? Are you under too much stress?" "This isn't an impulsive decision," I replied, my voice level, unwavering. "The house has been professionally staged and photographed. The listing went live last night." "Sunday, this Sunday," my father sputtered, disbelief and panic warring on his face. "Where are we supposed to go?" "I've made reservations for brunch at the St. Regis," I said, already prepared with a solution. "My treat. We should be gone from 11 to 3. My mother's tears dried up instantly, replaced by a cold fury. "You expect us to go to brunch while strangers walk through our home?" "My home," I corrected again, my gaze unwavering. "And yes, that's exactly what I expect." My father pulled out his trump card, the one he always played when he felt he was losing control. "I'm calling Jessica. She'll talk some sense into you." I shrugged, a gesture so foreign to my usual accommodating body language that they both stared, momentarily stunned. "Call whoever you want." An hour later, we were seated in our living room in a twisted parody of a family meeting. Jessica had arrived, kids in tow, her husband Mark trailing behind, looking deeply uncomfortable, already envisioning the inevitable drama. The children had been dispatched to the backyard, lured by the promise of ice cream, leaving the adults to what my father ominously called sorting this mess out. "Sarah," Jessica began, clearly designated as the mediator, her voice gentle, almost pleading. "I understand you're going through something right now, but selling the house seems extreme." "It's not extreme. It's a practical decision. I'm moving to Austin for a new job opportunity." Mark, who had always been peripheral to family dynamics, spoke up unexpectedly, surprising us all. "Austin's a great market right now. Growing tech sector, outdoor lifestyle. Smart move professionally." My father shot him a glare that could have melted steel. "Not helpful, Mark. Just saying, Career-wise, it makes sense. Mark shrugged, retreating slightly but maintaining his stance. My mother ignored this tangent, focusing her laser-like attention on me. But why so suddenly? Why not give us time to find a place? Get organized? The closing will be in 30 days. That's standard. You have a month to make arrangements. A month? My father exploded. His face flushed. To find an apartment, pack everything in this rental market? It's impossible. I managed to organize selling a house and relocating to another state in a week, I pointed out, my voice laced with a subtle challenge. I'm sure between the two of you, finding a local apartment in a month is doable. Jessica looked between us, her expression clearly struggling with divided loyalties, caught in the middle of a conflict she hadn't anticipated. Mom, Dad, Sarah does have the right to sell her own house. Maybe we should focus on helping you find a new place. My father's betrayed expression would have been comical if it weren't so predictable. You're taking her side. I'm not taking sides. I'm being practical. If the house is for sale, you need somewhere to live. The conversation deteriorated from there, a familiar, ugly cycle. My parents, individually and then together, cycled through anger, guilt-tripping, and finally, bargaining. Just give us 3 months, my mother pleaded, tears welling again, until after the holidays. The market is hot right now, I replied, unyielding. Waiting would be financially irresponsible. My father snorted, a sound of pure disgust. Since when do you care about money more than family? The irony of his statement hung heavy in the air between us, thick and suffocating. If only he knew. If only he knew how his own words about me, his cruel dismissal of my worth, had set all of this in motion. But I held my tongue, refusing to give away the knowledge that fueled my resolve. Not yet. By Sunday, the tension in the house was unbearable, a thick, palpable wall of resentment and unspoken accusations. My parents had shifted tactics, resorting to cold silence, a passive-aggressive maneuver they'd employed throughout my childhood whenever I disappointed them. We drove to brunch in complete silence, the atmosphere in the car thick with unspoken recriminations, each of us locked in our own private battle. At the St. Regis, as I picked up my Eggs Benedict, my phone buzzed with a text from Sophia. Huge turnout, at least 40 parties so far, several very interested. A small, triumphant smile touched my lips, quickly suppressed. Monday morning brought news that exceeded even Sophia's optimistic projections. We have 7 offers, she announced when I called her from work, her voice buzzing with excitement. The highest is $875,000, all cash, a 21-day close, minimal contingencies. Accept it, I said, without hesitation, the words firm and clear. Are you sure? We could counter. Maybe push them to $885,000. The speed is more important to me than squeezing out another $10,000, I replied. I wanted out, and I wanted out now. By the time I returned home that evening, I had a signed purchase agreement and a closing date, June 17th, exactly 3 weeks away. The buyers had waived the inspection contingency based on the home's age and impeccable condition, requiring only a standard appraisal for their lender. Meanwhile, Lisa and Austin had found me a perfect apartment, a 2-bedroom with stunning city views and distant mountain views, in a secure building downtown, walking distance to my new office. I can hold it with a deposit, she'd said. It'll be available June 20th, if that timing works for you. 3 days after closing, just enough time to drive from Atlanta to Austin with whatever possessions I decided to keep. The next phase was sorting and packing. I hired a professional organizer, Olivia Green, who specialized in downsizing and helping people transition to new lives. Think of it as curating your life, she suggested, her calm, reassuring voice a balm to my frayed nerves. As we stood in my bedroom, surveying the accumulated possessions of my entire adult life. Keep only what serves your new chapter. Together, we created 3 distinct categories: keep, sell, donate, and discard. My wardrobe was ruthlessly edited, the formal business attire of Atlanta banking giving way to Austin's more casual tech culture. Furniture that wouldn't fit in my new apartment was consigned to high-end resale shops. Books were boxed for donation to the local library, save for a carefully selected collection I couldn't bear to part with. My colleague, Rachel White, volunteered to help one weekend, arriving with coffee and an efficient attitude that matched my own newfound decisiveness. Catherine's in denial, she confided, a wry smile on her face, as we wrapped framed photographs in bubble wrap. She keeps telling everyone you'll change your mind before the transfer paperwork goes through. Not a chance, I replied, carefully packing away a photo of my college graduation, the only one where both my parents appeared genuinely proud of me, smiling directly at the camera. Had that been real or just for the camera? The thought lingered, a faint echo of doubt. As we worked, memories surfaced, of my ex-boyfriend Liam, who had never understood my family dynamics. You drop everything whenever they call, he'd complained during our last fight. His voice laced with exasperation. It's like you're their parent, not the other way around. I'd ended things shortly after, convinced he was being selfish for not understanding my family obligations. Now I wondered if he'd seen what I'd been blind to all along. By the second week, the house was half-packed, my life sorted into neat labeled boxes. The Austin job offer had been formalized with a generous relocation package and a starting salary that exceeded my Atlanta position. Catherine had reluctantly processed my transfer request, extracting a promise that I'd train my replacement before leaving. My parents' efforts to find their own place had been half-hearted at best. My father made a show of circling apartment listings in the newspaper, but invariably complained that everything was too expensive or too small. My mother mentioned moving in with Jessica temporarily with increasing frequency, despite Jessica's obvious reluctance during our family calls. The clock was ticking, 3 days before closing. 3 days. I returned home to find them waiting for me in the living room. Jessica was beside them, looking deeply uncomfortable, clearly having been roped into this. The formal arrangement of furniture, my parents on the sofa, a single chair positioned opposite, like defendants before a judge, made it clear this was an intervention. We need to talk, my father began, using the authoritative tone that had once sent me scrambling to please him, to anticipate his needs, to placate his moods. Far enough, I repeated, my voice dangerously calm, setting my purse down but remaining standing. I wouldn't be intimidated. Not anymore. The movers come tomorrow. The closing is in 3 days. This isn't a negotiation. Sarah, please sit down, my mother said, patting the chair they'd positioned. Her voice was soft, laced with a feigned concern. We're worried about you. Jessica nodded, though her expression was conflicted, her gaze flitting between her parents and me. We just want to understand what's happening. This isn't like you. I sat, crossing my legs and folding my hands in my lap, the poised professional, even in the midst of this family drama. What exactly isn't like me? Making a career decision, moving to a new city. Millions of people do these things every day. Abandoning your family without warning, my father clarified, his jaw tight, his voice a low growl. Throwing your parents out of their home. It's not abandonment, it's relocation, and it's not their home, it's mine. Jessica winced at my tone, a subtle flicker of discomfort crossing her face, but I continued, unwavering. I've given you 3 weeks' notice, which is more than fair. Fair? My mother's voice rose, tears already gathering in her eyes. She'd always been able to cry on command, a skill I'd both envied and resented. After everything we've done for you? The question hung in the air, so absurd, so utterly divorced from reality, that for a split second I almost left. Everything they'd done for me? What exactly did they think that entailed? Mom, Jessica interjected gently, trying to steer the conversation away from the precipice. Maybe we should focus on solutions. Sarah has made her decision about the house. My father wasn't ready to concede. No daughter who respected her parents would do this. It's selfish and ungrateful. I expected better from you, Sarah. You've always been a disappointment, but this takes it to a new level. There it was. A disappointment. The same word he'd used with Thomas. The same word he thought I'd never hear. The final thread of my restraint, stretched taut for decades, snapped. My composure, so carefully maintained, shattered into 1,000 pieces, replaced by a cold, hard fury. A disappointment, I repeated, my voice deadly calm, like the surface of a frozen lake, betraying the raging current beneath. Like when you told Thomas I was nothing, a failure, should have never been born. The color drained from my father's face, leaving it ashen. Beside him, my mother went completely still, her eyes wide with shock and dawning horror. Jessica's gasp was audible, a sharp intake of breath. Dad, what is she talking about? My father recovered quickly, his expression shifting to defensive indignation. He was a master of deflection. "You were eavesdropping on a private conversation," he spat, his voice regaining some of its usual bluster. "I came home early to share good news about a client presentation," I countered. My eyes locked on his, challenging him. "You were broadcasting your conversation through the whole house because you can't operate video call software properly. You clearly misunderstood," my mother interjected, reaching for my hand, a pathetic attempt at reconciliation, at pulling me back into their orbit. I pulled away before she could touch me, the very thought of her touch making my skin crawl. "Whatever you think you heard." "I heard you too, Mom," I interrupted, my voice unwavering, joining in about how cold I am, how focused on money and status, how you're tired of walking on eggshells around me and pretending to be interested in my work stories, how the expensive Christmas watches I bought you were tasteless, how you're both just playing the game until you can afford to move near Jessica. My mother's mouth opened and closed, no words emerging. Her carefully constructed mask of maternal concern had completely fallen, revealing the raw, ugly truth beneath. Beside her, my father, momentarily stunned, switched tactics. "Everyone vents sometimes, Sarah. You're taking things out of context. Of course we appreciate everything you do for us." "Do you?" I reached into my bag and pulled out a folder. I'd prepared this moment, though I hadn't been sure it would ever come. It was my shield, my weapon, my undeniable truth. "Let me show you what everything looks like." I opened the folder and removed a spreadsheet, sliding it across the coffee table toward them. It was meticulously detailed, every penny accounted for. "This is a complete accounting of what I've spent supporting you both for the past 3 years. Mortgage payments, utilities, groceries and household expenses, car insurance, cell phone bills, medical expenses not covered by Medicare, home repairs and improvements." I turned to a second page, filled with even more insidious details. Plus the loans that were never repaid, Dad's new truck after the bankruptcy, Mom's cosmetic dental work, the Florida vacation last winter, Jessica's children's private school application fees that you insisted on covering. Jessica's head snapped up, her eyes wide with astonishment. "What? They told me you offered to pay those." "I did," I confirmed, a bitter laugh escaping my lips. "After they pressured me. Just like I've been secretly funding your children's college accounts for the past 5 years. A month, automatically transferred. That's they haven't bothered to tell you about." The look of shock on her face confirmed what I'd suspected. Our parents had taken credit for my financial contributions to her children's future, just as they'd taken credit for my success when it suited them. They'd manipulated us both, using me as a resource, and her as a shield. "You've been supporting us," yes, my father acknowledged grudgingly, his voice flat. "But that's what family does. We raised you, put you through college." "My scholarships and student loans put me through college," I corrected, my voice sharp, "which I paid off myself. As for raising me, let's talk about that." I turned to Jessica, addressing her directly, laying bare the pattern. "Did you know Dad missed my high school graduation because Dylan had a dance recital the same day?" Jessica frowned, genuinely confused. "That's not how they explained it to me. They said you told them not to come because you were embarrassed about Dad's bankruptcy." "Of course that's what they told you," I shook my head, the weight of years of collected slights and dismissals suddenly crystallizing into a clear, undeniable pattern. "They've been playing us against each other our whole lives, making you the golden child and me the responsible one, ensuring we never compared notes." My mother stood abruptly, her face contorted, beyond tears, beyond pretense. "This is ridiculous. We've always loved both our daughters equally." Her voice was shrill, desperate. "Really?" I challenged, my voice cutting through her theatrical display. "Then why did you tell Thomas that Jessica is Dad's real achievement while I'm just a pathetic workaholic? Why did you spend more on Jessica's prom dress than you did on my entire college dorm setup? Why have you attended every single one of her children's birthday parties, but forgot mine for 3 years running?" The silence that followed was deafening. My father stared at the financial spreadsheet, his face devoid of emotion, seemingly unable to dispute the concrete evidence of my support, the undeniable numbers staring back at him. My mother had given up on tears and was now looking at me with something close to hatred, a raw, naked animosity. Her mask of maternal concern was completely dropped, and for the first time, I saw her for exactly who she was. I don't expect answers, I continued, gathering the papers and returning them to my bag, my hands steady. I don't even want them anymore. What I want is for you to understand exactly why I'm leaving. It's not about the money. It's about the decades of emotional manipulation and favoritism. It's about discovering that the people I've sacrificed everything for see me as nothing but a convenient resource. I turned to Jessica, whose expression had shifted from confusion to dawning comprehension, a quiet understanding settling over her features. I don't blame you. You didn't create the dynamic. They did. But I'm done with it. What about us? My father finally asked, his voice strained, gesturing between himself and my mother. Where are we supposed to go in 3 days? That's not my problem anymore, I stated, my voice firm, devoid of guilt. I've accepted a position with Summit Financial Group in Austin. I'm leaving the day after closing. You can't just abandon us, my mother insisted, panic replacing anger in her voice. We're your parents. Being a parent is more than biology, I replied, the words ringing with a truth I had only recently discovered. It's support, encouragement, and love, things I've given you far more of than I've ever received. I stood up, signaling the end of the conversation. You can stay until closing day. After that, you're on your own. Jessica rose as well, her expression troubled but resolute. Mom, Dad, maybe you could stay with us for a little while until you find a place. The speed with which my parents pivoted to their backup plan was almost impressive. My mother's tears were turned on cue as she embraced Jessica, clinging to her, morphing instantly into the helpless victim. Oh, sweetheart, we wouldn't want to impose. It's fine, Jessica said, though her tone suggested it was anything but. The guest room is small, but it's just temporary. I caught her eye over our mother's shoulder, and for the first time in our adult lives, I felt a moment of true connection with my sister, a shared recognition of the manipulation we'd both been subject to, in different ways. She gave me a small, sad nod, a silent acknowledgement of the complex web our parents had woven. As they discussed logistics, I quietly left the room. There was nothing more to say. The truth had been laid bare, the decision made. In 3 days, I would close this chapter of my life and begin writing a new one, on my own terms, without the crushing weight of unrequited family obligation dragging me down. Closing day arrived with a sense of finality that was both terrifying and incredibly liberating. I met Sophia at the title company's office, a sleek, modern space downtown. I signed document after document, initialing page after page until my hand cramped, the pen becoming an extension of my resolve. When the final paper was processed, she handed me a cashier's check for $823,405, the sale price minus the remaining mortgage balance and closing costs. Congratulations, she said, shaking my hand firmly, a genuine smile on her face. Most of my clients are sad on closing day, but you look relieved. I am, I admitted, the weight lifting from my shoulders. It's a fresh start. My parents had moved out the previous day, reluctantly relocating to Jessica's guest room, just until they found the perfect place. They'd taken far more than their personal belongings. Kitchen appliances I'd purchased, the new living room furniture, even bathroom fixtures that should have stayed with the house. I let it go. The material things seemed insignificant compared to the emotional baggage I was leaving behind. After the closing, I returned to the empty house for one final walkthrough. Each room held memories, some good, many tainted now by the knowledge of my parents' true feelings. The kitchen where I'd prepared countless family meals, always hoping for a word of praise. The dining room where I'd endured subtle criticisms disguised as concern. The home office where I'd overheard the conversation that changed everything. I was standing in my old bedroom, now stripped bare, a hollow echo of its former self, when Jessica arrived. Alone. I thought you might be here, she said, hovering in the doorway, her voice quiet. The kids are with Mark's mom. I wanted to help with any last-minute things. I'm all packed, I replied, gesturing to the bare room. The movers took everything yesterday. She nodded, stepping further inside, her gaze sweeping around the empty space. I'm sorry, Sarah, about all of it. I had no idea they felt that way about you. Her voice was thick with genuine regret. I know, I assured her. It's not your fault. But I benefited from it, she acknowledged, surprising me with her insight, her honesty. My whole life, I got the praise, the attention, the support. I never questioned why, because it was normal to me. Why would you question it? We stood in silence for a moment. The weight of our shared history, our intertwined but vastly different experiences, hanging in the air between us. Are we going to stay in touch? She finally asked, her voice small, almost hesitant. After you move? I'd like to, I said honestly. A new beginning, even for us. You and the kids, we can video chat, figure out a new relationship without them in the middle. She smiled tentatively, a flicker of hope in her eyes. I'd like that too. Together, we walked through the house one last time, locking doors and closing blinds, a symbolic act of closure. At the front entrance, I handed her the spare key I'd been keeping for the buyers. Take care of yourself in Austin, she said, embracing me awkwardly. We'd never been physically affectionate siblings, but this felt different. It was a gesture of solidarity, a silent promise. Take care of yourself with them, I replied, my voice gentle but firm. Don't let them do to you what they did to me. Chloe was waiting in her car when I emerged, ready for our 2-day road trip to Austin. We'd planned it as an adventure, a cleansing journey from my old life to the new. Ready? She asked as I slid into the passenger seat, the smell of fresh coffee filling the car. More than you know. As Atlanta receded in the rearview mirror, shrinking into the distance, the tension I'd carried for years, a knot of anxiety and obligation in my shoulders, began to dissolve. We crossed state lines, singing along to playlists we'd curated for the trip, stopping at quirky roadside attractions, talking about everything and nothing. With each mile, I felt lighter, more myself. The air felt clearer, the sky bluer. I was breathing again. Austin welcomed us with stunning mountain views and clear blue skies. My new apartment was everything Lisa had promised. Modern, spacious, with floor-to-ceiling windows framing the distant Rockies, a breathtaking panorama. The furnishings I'd kept fit perfectly, and what was missing could be replaced in time, chosen with intention for me. This place is gorgeous, Chloe declared, as we uncorked a bottle of champagne that first night, toasting to new beginnings. To freedom, I countered, clinking my glass against hers, the sound ringing with joyful liberation. Chloe stayed for a week, helping me settle in, unpacking boxes, exploring the new city before flying back to Atlanta. Her departure was bittersweet, my only tangible connection to my old life returning to it. But I wasn't alone for long. My new position at Summit Financial Group began the following Monday. The team welcomed me warmly, with genuine smiles and helpful advice. The work itself was engaging, similar enough to my previous role to leverage my expertise, but different enough to present new challenges, new ways of thinking. My boss, Rachel Stone, had a management style that emphasized results over FaceTime, a refreshing change from Atlanta's more traditional banking culture. It was a perfect fit. 1 month into my new life, I was establishing routines. Morning runs in a nearby park, the crisp Austin air invigorating my lungs. Weekend hikes in the foothills, the vastness of the landscape making my old worries seem small. Evenings spent reading, exploring my new city's vibrant food scene, or simply enjoying the quiet solitude of my own space. My apartment was taking shape, becoming a true reflection of my tastes, without accommodation for anyone else's preferences or demands. It was mine. The phone call from Jessica came on a Sunday afternoon, a few weeks later. "How's Austin?" she asked after pleasantries were exchanged. "It's wonderful," I replied truthfully, a genuine smile on my face. "How are things there?" Her hesitation told me everything before she spoke. "Challenging. Mom and Dad are still with us. They've looked at a few apartments but always find reasons why they won't work." "Let me guess," I said, a wry smile playing on my lips. "Too small, too expensive, wrong neighborhood?" "Exactly," she sighed, a weary note in her voice. "And they're not contributing to household expenses. Mark is getting frustrated." "They did the same thing to me," I reminded her gently, a soft warning. "It's a pattern." "I know," she paused, then continued, a raw honesty in her voice. I feel guilty even complaining to you about it after what you went through." "Don't," I said firmly. We're both their daughters, just in different roles. And we both deserve to live our own lives. After we hung up, I felt a momentary pang of guilt. Had I simply shifted their burden from my shoulders to Jessica's? But I reminded myself that Jessica had Mark, a partnership to help bear the weight. And unlike me, she'd been raised with the tools to set boundaries, having seen them modeled by our parents her entire life. She understood what I'd only just learned. That night, I noticed a letter in my mail pile with my mother's distinctive, elegant handwriting. I set it aside, not yet ready to read whatever justifications or manipulations it contained. Instead, I went out onto my balcony, watching the sunset paint the mountains in shades of pink and gold, the city lights beginning to twinkle below. For the first time in memory, I was sleeping through the night, uninterrupted by anxiety dreams or insomnia. My appetite had returned, and with it, a few pounds that softened the gaunt look stress had carved into my face. Colleagues commented on my energy, my creativity, the fresh perspectives I brought to meetings. I was thriving. The following week, I received a video call request from Catherine. Curious, I accepted. "Austin agrees with you," she observed, studying me through the screen, a small smile on her lips. "You look well." "I am well," I confirmed, my voice full of conviction. "How are things at Sterling Wealth Management?" "Productive. Your replacement is working out, though she lacks your attention to detail." She paused, her expression turning serious. "I should mention that your parents contacted the firm, asking for your new address." My stomach tightened. "What did you tell them?" "That it's against company policy to disclose personal information about employees. They were quite insistent, your father especially." "Thank you for not sharing it," Catherine nodded, her gaze kind. "I gathered there were personal reasons for your relocation. It's not my business, but if you ever need anything—" "I appreciate that," I said, genuinely touched by her unexpected support. She saw me, the real me. After the call, I messaged Jessica, asking her to reinforce with our parents that contacting my workplace was unacceptable. Her response was immediate. "Already handled it. They won't do it again." Perhaps the most unexpected development in my new life was my neighbor, Alex Morgan. We'd met in the elevator my first week, both carrying grocery bags from the organic market down the street. He was a software engineer, transplanted from Seattle 2 years earlier, with an easy smile and no expectations. Our friendship developed naturally, organically. Casual conversations in the lobby evolving into coffee at the corner cafe, then hiking excursions on weekends. He didn't press for details about my past, accepting my vague explanations about wanting a change of scenery. In return, I didn't question the sadness that sometimes flickered across his features when certain topics arose. It was a comfortable, unspoken understanding. 6 months after my arrival in Austin, I stood on my balcony, watching the first snowfall of the season. The delicate flakes drifting silently down, blanketing the city in white. A cup of hot chocolate, thick and sweet, warmed my hands. My phone buzzed with a text from Alex. "Snow day hike tomorrow?" "The trails look magical after a fresh powder." I smiled, typing back my acceptance, a lightness in my chest. Behind me, my apartment glowed with warmth. Smaller than my Atlanta home, yes, but truly mine in every way that mattered. On the wall hung a painting I'd commissioned of the Atlanta skyline, my way of honoring the city that had shaped me without being defined by it. It was a bridge, not a burden. I was not the same person who had overheard that devastating conversation half a year ago. That Sarah had been defined by her role as the dutiful daughter, the family ATM, the responsible one. This Sarah was defined by her own choices, her own priorities, her own joy. The path to this freedom hadn't been easy or clean. There were still moments of doubt, flashes of the old guilt, whispers of what-ifs, but they were growing fainter, overwhelmed by the undeniable evidence that I had made the right choice for myself, and perhaps, ultimately, for everyone involved. December arrived with a flurry of snow and holiday decorations throughout Austin. My professional life had exceeded all expectations. 3 months after joining Summit Financial Group, I'd been promoted to team lead, managing 6 analysts and reporting directly to the regional director. My colleagues respected my expertise, and clients appreciated my straightforward approach to financial planning. Personally, I'd found my footing in this new city. My apartment, while more modest than my Atlanta home, felt authentically mine. I'd purchased it in October after my rental lease expired, using a portion of the proceeds from the sale of the Illinois house. At 1,500 SQFT, it was the perfect size for one person who valued quality over quantity. My friendship with Alex had deepened into something more. Though we were taking things slowly, both of us carried baggage from previous relationships. His a divorce, mine the complex entanglement of family dysfunction. We'd agreed to be intentional about our connection, building a foundation of honesty and respect before defining what we might become to each other. Every step was deliberate, every feeling acknowledged. Every Saturday morning, I video called with Jessica and her children. These conversations had become a highlight of my week, a way to maintain family bonds that were healthy and reciprocal, free from the shadow of our parents. Her oldest, Leo, was applying to colleges and often sought my advice on financial planning for education, treating me like a trusted aunt, not a distant sister. The younger two, Clara and Mia, simply enjoyed showing me their latest art projects or soccer trophies, their bright faces filling my screen with unadulterated joy. My parents, meanwhile, had made multiple attempts to reconnect on their terms. Email forwards with passive-aggressive subject lines like, "In case you're interested in your family," arrived regularly. Phone calls came on holidays and birthdays, filled with subtle guilt trips and thinly veiled criticisms of my abandonment. I'd finally read my mother's letter, finding exactly what I'd expected. A masterclass in manipulation disguised as maternal concern. "We only want what's best for you," she'd written. "Families should stay together, especially as parents age. Your father and I aren't getting any younger." Dr. Reed, who continued our therapy sessions via video, helped me navigate these boundary violations without falling back into old patterns. "Forgiveness doesn't mean reconciliation," she reminded me. "You can release the anger without allowing them back into a position where they can harm you." Her words were a constant anchor, a reminder to protect the peace I'd fought so hard for. As Christmas approached, I faced a decision about holiday plans. Jessica had invited me to visit Atlanta, offering her home as neutral territory for a potential family gathering. "Just dinner, Sarah, no pressure." Alex had suggested a ski weekend in Vail as an alternative, a magical escape into the snow-covered mountains. A third option beckoned as well, hosting my own small celebration in Austin with the local friends I'd made through work and my hiking group. "What does your gut tell you?" Dr. Reed asked during our session. "That I'm not ready to see them," I admitted. The thought of sitting across a table from my father, pretending everything was fine, pretending those words were never spoken. "I can't do it yet." "Then don't," she said, her voice gentle but firm. "Your healing timeline is your own." I chose option 3, decorating my apartment with tasteful but festive touches. A small tree in the corner, adorned with simple white lights. Twinkling lights strung along the balcony railing, casting a soft glow on the freshly fallen snow. Handmade wreaths I'd created at a community workshop. My space, my rules, my joy. The day before the gathering, my doorbell rang. A delivery person handed me a package. From Jessica. Inside were handmade ornaments from the children, crafted with glitter and pipe cleaners, along with a card that brought tears to my eyes. "We miss you, but we understand. Building your own traditions is important too. Love you, sis." I hung the ornaments prominently on my tree, a splash of vibrant color amidst the white lights, photographing them to send with my heartfelt thanks. This was true family. This was love. As I was about to put my phone away, it rang. A familiar Atlanta number, my father. For a moment, I considered letting it go to voicemail, but something prompted me to answer, to face it. "Hello, Sarah." His voice sounded older, smaller somehow. "Merry Christmas." "Merry Christmas, Dad," I replied, keeping my tone neutral, devoid of the emotion that used to control me. "Your mother and I," he began, then cleared his throat, a hesitant, unfamiliar sound. "We're in our own place now, a small apartment near Jessica." "That's good," I said, genuinely glad to hear it. "I'm glad to hear it." An awkward silence stretched between us, long and heavy. I waited, refusing to fill it as I once would have, refusing to carry the burden of his discomfort. "Things have been difficult," he finally continued, his voice tight. "Financially, the rental market here is worse than we expected." There it was, the real purpose of the call. the unspoken request, the predictable pattern. "I'm sorry to hear that," I said, my voice sympathetic but firm. Another pause, longer this time. I could almost hear his internal struggle, pride wrestling with need, expectation battling with the new reality he now faced. "Sarah, I know things ended badly, but we're your parents. We need—" "Dad," I interrupted gently but firmly, cutting him off before he could fully articulate the demand. "I'm not in a position to provide financial support anymore. My life has changed. My expenses and priorities are different now." "But family helps family," he insisted, the familiar guilt tactic emerging, desperate and transparent. "Yes, they do," I replied, my voice unwavering. "And that help can take many forms. I'm happy to stay in touch, to rebuild a relationship based on mutual respect. But my financial support is no longer an option." The silence that followed told me everything about his true priorities. The shift from a plea for connection to a stark, cold silence confirmed it all. When he spoke again, his voice was tight with suppressed anger, the last vestiges of his manipulative facade gone. "I see. Well, Merry Christmas then." "Merry Christmas, Dad," I repeated, ending the call before he could continue. I stood on my balcony afterward, watching snow fall gently on the city below, the lights twinkling like scattered diamonds. 6 months ago, that conversation would have left me devastated, racked with guilt and self-doubt. Now, I felt only a calm certainty that I had made the right decision. Not just for my financial well-being, but for my emotional health, for my very soul. Christmas Eve arrived with perfect Rocky Mountain clarity, brilliant blue skies contrasting with snow-covered peaks in the distance. My apartment filled with delicious aromas as I prepared dinner, something I'd once done out of obligation, a chore to be endured, but now enjoyed as a creative expression, a gift to myself and my chosen family. Alex arrived early to help, moving around my kitchen with comfortable familiarity, a natural, easy presence. "Your dad called again?" he asked when I mentioned the conversation. Trying the direct approach this time, I confirmed, checking the roast in the oven. At least he was honest about wanting money. "And you're okay with setting that boundary?" he asked, his eyes searching mine. I considered the question seriously. "Yes," I said, a profound sense of peace settling over me. For the first time in my adult life, I feel like I'm making choices based on what's right for me, not what others expect or demand. He smiled, the expression warming his eyes. "That's what I admire about you, Sarah, your courage to redefine yourself." As my guests arrived, Alex, Rachel Stone and her husband, other friends from work and my hiking group, bringing wine and desserts and holiday cheer, I realized I'd created something precious here, a chosen family, built on genuine connection, laughter, and mutual respect, rather than obligation or manipulation. We laughed and shared stories, exchanged small, thoughtful gifts, celebrated the season with a joy uncomplicated by past grievances or hidden agendas. It was everything I'd ever wanted and so much more. After everyone had gone home, Gabriel lingered, helping me clean up despite my protest that it could wait until morning. "I have something for you," he said, pulling a small wrapped package from his jacket pocket. Not exactly a Christmas gift, more of a new tradition gift. Inside was a beautiful compass, its brass case engraved with mountains and stars. "For someone who found her true north," he explained, his voice soft, "who had the courage to navigate by her own stars." My phone rang before I could respond, its screen lighting up with the familiar Atlanta number. My parents calling for their annual Christmas check-in. In previous years, I would have immediately answered, abandoning whatever I was doing to fulfill my filial duty, to quell their expectations. This time, I looked at Alex, at the compass in my hand, at the warm, glowing home I'd created for myself. "I'll call them back tomorrow," I decided, silencing the ringer, the decision peaceful, not defiant. Tonight is for new beginnings. As I stood on my balcony later that night, Alex's arm around my shoulders, watching the city lights twinkle beneath a canopy of stars, I felt a profound sense of peace settle over me. The journey from Atlanta to Austin had been far more than geographical. It had been a reclamation of self, a declaration of worth, a lesson in the profound difference between obligation and love. I had sold a house worth $830,000, but what I gained in return was priceless. The knowledge that I deserved better, the strength to create boundaries, and the freedom to build a life that honored my own heart. So I want to ask you all, what would you have done in my situation? Would you have confronted your parents immediately or taken a similar approach to mine? I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments below. If you've ever had to set difficult boundaries with family, share your experience. Your story might help someone else who's struggling with similar issues. Thank you so much for spending this time with me today. If you found value in my story, please hit that like button and subscribe to the channel for more real-life experiences and lessons learned. Until next time, remember that true family is defined by love and respect, not just by blood. Take care of yourselves.